welcome back once again to the Necro Zoo. I am Bone.
Oh, yeah.
And in this one, let's go ahead and add one more figure to my McFarlane DC Multiverse collection. Now, today we will take a look at Dark Flash. Now, this is a Flash that never really heard of until recently. What I did find interesting about him was the artwork that I saw online, the source material. Very interesting version of the Flash, a little bit of an attitude and a darkness to his look, which is right up my alley. Now, don't really know much about the character, so this is going to be more just looking at the figure than anything else. But he does look pretty scarred in the packaging. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. But first, he does come with your standard black DC Multiverse stand. Now, of course, these are not really needed, but sometimes they do come in useful. He also comes with a data file card on the front. You have some of that cool imagery that I was talking about that really got me interested about this figure when I really don't know anything about the character in the comics. What I found when I looked up was Walter West, an alternate version from an alternate timeline. A little bit darker and more sinister feel to him, and even his costume gives him that slight edge that the public that sees him kind of knows he's not a Flash to play around with. But from a storyline, new kid in town, don't know much about it, but seems interesting. On the back, you do have some information on him, but we'll hold on to that as we usually do now. No alternate hands, pretty big letdown from McFarlane. But I do have to say, I bought this in the bundle, so I think this guy cost me right around $20 and change. So I mean, it just gets a little bit annoying about the alternate hands. But for a $20 figure, what can we expect? Now, you do get some energy effects. These are some really nice transparent plastic with a tinge of blue in there, giving off a little bit of effect of the Speed Force. So pretty cool as always. I don't really ever use these. Maybe when I do figure photography, I could use them, but not for displaying or anything like that. So these usually go into a big box of energy effects, but we'll still hold on to those. Now let's go ahead and take a closer look at this guy. Now, I did have some incoming expectations. I knew the things that were kind of going to be disappointing, but I still had a lot of optimism getting into this figure. Maybe by the time we end this review, with a couple of little touches and extra added details that I did, maybe you'll understand why. In the end, I was very happy with this guy, and it seems like he may be one of my favorite speedster characters. But first impressions, what I really like is that darker auburn, almost a maroon color that they used for the costume, really contrasting with that high silver that adds the detail of the costume design. Just the contrasting colors is something different and adds a cool, sleek design to this character. Now, this is on the Blue Beetle Booster Gold Body book, which is one of the books that McFarlane has consistently reused. The only good thing is it's not it's not the only body. You're not going to ever reach the numbers of Bucky Cap, which were like 300 or something like that. I'd say right now he's really using about 4 or 5 bodies, maybe a little bit more, that are reoccurring bucks that he uses for different characters. But in the end, nothing wrong with that. Reuse is a part of the game. And this body isn't very bulky. It's got that lean body and really works with this Dark Flash character, especially matching up with the images from the comics. All in all, great looking suit, really well executed, and a costume that you don't see every day. So pretty nice for the refreshing take on a speedster character. Take a look at the head sculpt now. This is something that I was really looking forward to taking a look at in hand. A closer look at this really nice head sculpt. Now, if you look at the design of his mask, you have the covered nose, the chin strap, and a full encased cowl. So, really like the look of this mask. Now, he does have the wingtips on the side. If you look at the comic, it does match exactly the source material. I just feel like they could be a little bit higher up, not so low, but it wasn't a big enough detail to really take any points away. Looks very nice. And they did get them level on either side of the head. So really liking this head sculpt. They did add some sculpture around the mouth and the lips to give them a gritty look, which I am a big fan of. Now, taking a look at the articulation, he does look down, but not too much. His head is kind of tight a little bit. Looks up a little bit, but not too much. Once again, the same. Now, if you heat this up, you could get a little bit more range and articulation, but the ultimate thing is going to be the mods. And I had to go ahead and mod this guy, but I'll show that later on in the video. But you do look up a respectable amount. You got right to left. And of course, you could tilt the head for some attitude. Really love the eyes on this guy as well. Those whited out eyes, just giving him the slightest bit of a creepy factor. A little bit otherworldly, even. Very, very nice. Now we really get a closer look at the costume design. You got that big silver bolt on the left side of the chest, down into the trunks where you have some added silver accent. Once again, as I said, a unique costume for a Flash character. Check out the waist articulation. You got very nice waist articulation. You get that full tilt-a-whirl. Twist them, get them in some sweet poses. Not too much of a front crunch. It is there, but once again, the mods are going to make the whole difference. And I knew I would want to do this with this one, so I'll show later on when I do the waist mod. Get them in a T pose really nicely. You got that shoulder socket and bushing joint, which allows you a lot of range of motion, and you even have up and down and front to back, bicep swivel, double jointed elbows, looks good. Straighten them out. Now, here is our first major speed bump, and that is once again McFarlane. I don't know what it is, what mental problems that McFarlane has, but he had to put a trigger finger with this guy. Now, I do know this body book, and I do know that there are tons of alternate hands from Blue Beetle that you already have the mold for. So you could have given him a fist, you could have given him a kind of open splayed running hand. There was no there was no reason on this green earth to give him a trigger finger. But par for the course for McFarlane. Not a dream killer, but very, very much annoying. I mean, they gave him the fist on the other side, which looks good. And once again, I will take care of this later on in the video. Moving down to the thighs, you have some really nice thigh swivel there. I'm not going to complain about that, which means you can move the boot from side to side without having a thigh cut. Kicks up really high, kicks back really far as well, and that is because the trunks are made of rubber, which allows that extra range and articulation. And when you put them back, the trunks go back to their original shape. Now, I'm not a big fan, once again, of that extra material, the flaps that kind of lean out past the thigh there. So once again, I'm going to cut those down and show you what it looks like later on. Cock out the knee, you got double jointed knees, straighten them out, up and down at the ankle, right to left, rocker and toe articulation. So Not much to speak of in the lower body. You do have some sculpt from the original design of Blue Beetle, and they just painted on the silver details. Once again, not super happy or crazy about, but it's a minuscule detail that not too hard to overlook. Take a look at him from the bottom. No tread, but he does have some identifying marks. Moving up the back, nothing much to speak of. Simple sculpt, nice costume design, nice shape as you go past the hips and move into the back. Always like these wide backs from McFarlane. The Bucks really seem to have some good musculature. Pretty awesome. Now, not too many figures I want to compare with him, but I do want to add that just by the colors and the way the design is, this really gives me a lot of that John Wesley Shipp from the Flash 90s TV series. Just gives me those vibes. It just reminds me of that costume. Now, Mattel did make this figure. When I was collecting Mattel, this was one of the figures that I really looked forward to. Not disappointed. Great figure, looks great for its time. They really got the colors down and the details of the costume. So I ended up buying two of these. Really happy. Was always a big fan of not really the show, but more the costume design of John Wesley Shipp. So this guy reminds me so much of that costume. I hope one day, hopefully, fingers crossed, McFarlane takes a stab at that John Wesley Shipp style costume. The other figure I wanted to bring out was what's Max Mercury. Now I never reviewed him, so been having a lot of fun posing him and taking a look at him with different speedsters. Now these are basically the same buck, although he has a couple of different details. Like the whole upper body is different. That collar, love the head sculpt, although I do remember this character more with like a white beard for some reason. But hey, the more obscure and the more deep dives McFarlane could do, I'm pretty happy with the amount of Flash or Speedster characters that we have in the collection. I think we're getting up there to maybe like 30, I would have to say. At least 30 Speedsters that we've received. Now, once again, this is a this is one of the figures that McFarlane had to do, his usual weirdness, and he gave him a trigger hand. So once again, I had to find him, an alternate hand because it just doesn't make sense to have a speedster with the with the trigger hand. So gave him this open hand. It works perfectly. He has a fist on the other side. A lot of cool details to the costume. So it's a figure that I've been having a lot of fun with. You could match them up next to this Dark Flash and get a little speedster duo going. So that's always fun with figure photography. And that does take me into the mods and the changes that I did. Now, starting from the top and going down to the bottom, uh, once again, I thought the head sat a little bit low on the neck, and what that does is restrict the articulation. So, got him another neck peg, which was a millimeter longer. It wasn't very much, but that little millimeter makes a big difference. I did the cutouts in the hole of the neck peg. That way, you could get more range forward and back. And the longer neck peg really made a difference. As you can see now, the head doesn't look so down on the shoulders, and he could look down a lot more. His chin almost touching the top of his chest. Of course, now he looks way up, almost completely up, which is a big difference than before. And it just gives you a lot more smoother range and options of the way you can tilt his head and pose this Flash character. Now, another thing is I added some pearl white to the eyes, just a little dab to give it a little bit more pop with that reflective paint. And once I was done with that, really makes a difference and adds to the whole mystique of the figure. Moving down, the next thing, of course, I had to do was add a fist. And that fist makes a world of difference. When you pose him, it's so much funner to have that other fist. All I had to do was, match the colors, which could be a little bit tedious sometimes, but I got it close enough to where it looks great. Now, another thing I noticed was that the front part of the silver detail to his costume, when you leaned him back, the paint stopped right under the rib cage and it kind of broke it up there. So once I took it all apart to do the waist mods, I took the time to tape it up and add that silver to make that silver reach farther up into under the chest, under the rib cage. So now you can lean him back and the silver extends and gives it a more sleeker and aesthetic look. Plus, doing the mods in the top part of the barbell and the lower part of the barbell for the waist articulation really adds, look at that, a lot more range. You can really lean them from side to side, smooth articulation, and it adds a whole new front crunch where you can see how the chest kind of collapses and almost touches the top of the trunks. And that is a much better front crunch just by adding those mods. And of course, that makes a whole difference when you're articulating him and posing him. So after I did all of that, I did go around and just touch up the silver paint, any little, splotches or uneven lines. I fixed them up. Man, this guy has really become one of my favorite speedsters. I mean, just look at the difference. Like when you first get it and you're like, oh, it's a, okay figure, nothing, out of this world. Now when I start posing him and, moving him around, it's really hard to put them down. Just those little details, even the cutting of the trunks, which is another thing I did. If you look at him from the back, now he doesn't have that extra material hanging over the back. It's a sleeker look, gives you cleaner lines on the trunks, and just adds to the whole aesthetic look of the figure. I mean, man, look at him. Now, now I am very pleased with him, even though I had to put a little bit of effort into it, but it makes a big difference. Now you can go ahead and, start having some fun with some figure photography. He's not hard to crouch down and get into some poses, which I know people talk a lot of crap about McFarlane that he makes statues and they don't have any posability. But I mean, look at that. So simple to get him down in a crouched position and have a lot of fun doing photography. So, like I said, taking something that isn't really that exciting and in the end making him a figure that you just cannot put down and has a real unique and signature look to this Dark Flash. So, anyways, guys, cool figure. I mean, it's up to you if you want to pick him up, but I just try and show you that he is really cool to add to your collection. So, anyways, you guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.